But what's been happening in Spain and Portugal? Well, electricity has mostly been restored a day after a massive power cut. It caused disruption to millions of shops, homes and businesses. It paralysed transport networks in both countries. The operator of Spain's national grid says power has been restored to 90% of the mainland, but the effects of the blackout are likely to be felt for days. The Spanish power company REE has ruled out a cyber attack as the cause of the mass blackouts. And we've just had a press conference we've been monitoring from the Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez, who says the investigation to find the cause was still ongoing.
We want to understand what has happened. We want to adopt the measures so as to ensure that this does not happen again. The technicians of the electricity grid are continuing with their analysis of the situation. We hope that there will be preliminary results shared in the next few hours or days. In parallel to that, private companies that generate electricity are looking at their production centres and their infrastructure so that we can gain a greater understanding of what happened in those key 5 seconds, that 5 seconds that led to the full outage of the system. We have to analyse that. So citizens need to be clear on the fact that the government will get to the bottom of this issue, of this crisis. Reforms will take place. The right measures will be undertaken so as to ensure that this does not happen again, and we will ensure that all private operators, those who are responsible, those who need to be accountable.
Well, that was Pedro Sánchez. Also listening to that was Guy Hedgecoe, who is in Madrid, and he told us more about what the Prime Minister had to say.
Well, he was very much there sort of playing up the scale of what happened yesterday and saying what a huge challenge it was for the authorities and also for ordinary Spaniards, and sort of saying how well Spaniards had dealt with that. He wasn't keen to give any sort of real clues about the cause of this, and that's really been the case since yesterday. He's been very adamant that we shouldn't jump to any conclusions. But we have, you mentioned there, Red Eléctrica. We've heard from Red Eléctrica, the company that manages the Spanish power grid. We've heard from them. They said in their preliminary report or investigation into all of this earlier on this morning that they do not believe this was a cyber attack. They do not believe there was any kind of interference in the Spanish grid ahead of the blackout yesterday. And they also talked about what they called a disconnection event, or two disconnection events, which took place barely a second apart, just moments before the blackout happened yesterday at around midday Spanish time. And those events appear to have taken place in the southwest of the country and may have been linked to the country's solar power generation. That's what we were told by Eduardo Prieto, who has a senior post at Red Eléctrica. So that's as far as we've got so far from the relevant authorities in terms of giving us an idea about what might have happened. Eduardo Prieto also said he didn't think that this was caused by human error either.
So what about Portugal? My colleague Rich Preston has just landed in Faro in the Algarve region in the south of Portugal, and I asked him what people had been telling him there.
Absolutely massive impact here. It's now 24 hours pretty much since the power went out, wiping out everything from traffic lights to street lights to, in some cases, mobile phone masts. Of course, things like hospitals, critical infrastructure like that, were able to keep the power on. And it's interesting hearing from Spanish officials here, and that's because the Portuguese energy system is so intrinsically tied to what happens in Spain. There's a Europe-wide energy sharing system, and Portugal connects to Europe via Spain. So anything that happens in Spain on an energy front does have a knock-on effect in Portugal. I'm here in Faro today. Lots of very happy people arriving at the airport today who were worried that their flights were going to be cancelled, their holiday plans were going to be scuppered. They were relieved to be arriving here, and possibly as well relieved to be seeing this solar tree behind me as well, just in case the power does blip out again. They can at least get some juices in their phone. The very British complaint that most people had on their mind was that it's cloudy.